Welcome to this special episode of the Harpreet Singh Show. I'm your host Harpreet Singh from Surrey, British Columbia, Canada. In today's program, my co-host is Dr. Arun Garg, and it's a special program because every second Tuesday of the month we have a special guest who comes forward and shares his or her wisdom on a special topic regarding health. So today we are very pleased to have Dr. Bonnie Kaplan with us, who is the author of The Better Brain, and our focus will be how to improve our brain health. So let's get over to both our guests and continue with the discussion, and we'll have, as usual, Dr. Arun Garg introducing our special guest today. Dr. Arun Garg and Dr. Bonnie Kaplan, welcome to the program.
Nice to be with you again.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, and thanks, Bonnie. So, Dr. Garg, if you could take the initiative to introduce our special guest today.
Yeah, it's a great pleasure and a privilege. We've been very fortunate to get some fabulous guests on the program. And today we have a very special guest who's become a good friend, Dr. Bonnie Kaplan, who is a professor emeritus at Cummings School of Medicine at University of Calgary. She has published widely on biological basis of developmental disorders and mental health. In 2019, she was recipient of very prestigious Dr. Rogers Prize, which is given on integrative thinking, integrative health. She lives in Calgary, and she is very active in building capacity for young researchers. We have a local connection with her. Dr. Karen Davidson was her doctoral student, and now she is a colleague and a co-worker with me. So pleasure to have her. Welcome, Dr. Kaplan, on the show.
Absolutely. Thank you very much. That's a wonderful introduction, Dr. Garg, that you have given. And of course, she's the author of The Better Brain, a wonderful bestseller book which talks in details about how we can improve our brain health. So, Dr. Bonnie, once again, welcome, and it's a great honor to have you here today. So we would like to start off with your book as such, The Better Brain, which you wrote. If you could point out some of the highlights of the book so that we can start the discussion from there.
Oh, summarize the whole book in just a few sentences. You told me to hold it up at some point, so here it is. It's the Purple Cauliflower. And it's out in paperback now, which I'm very grateful for. The purpose of this book, which I co-authored with a former student of mine, Dr. Julia Ruckledge, who's at the University of Canterbury in New Zealand. The purpose is to speak to the general public. We are both scientists. I'm pretty much retired, but she's very active. But we were not writing this for our scientific community. It's written for the general public to raise the level of awareness of and make people feel empowered at their own ability to improve their brain health. So that's the general goal, and we cover a lot of things that will enable people to understand the importance of this area.
Mm-hmm. So, Dr. Bonnie, what we see is that we are finding deterioration in our brain health, and a lot of issues, mental health issues are on the rise, depression, ADHD, Alzheimer, and whatnot. So, what do you feel, what is happening in today's society that if we compare it to maybe 2-3 decades before, things are not going in the right direction? So what have you analyzed in this book, and what have you come out with?
So I like to emphasize that the world has changed in many ways, but it really is no worse in terms of presenting stressors than what my ancestors had to deal with. And your ancestors, whether they were, as my family was, immigrating halfway around the world, and probably both of yours too, the world wars, the depression, so many things were so difficult. Here's what's changed: our resilience. And that is a critical piece of the puzzle. Now, there's nothing more complicated than human behavior. So it would be foolish if I led you and your listeners to believe that I think that nutrition is the answer for everything. It is not. But it is the most overlooked component. It's the component that we as a society have been neglecting terribly. And we have such solid data showing that resilience is a function of nutrition. It's the foundation of our physical and mental health, that people need to learn why that is so and what they can do to improve their own resilience. And that's also what the book is all about.
Mm-hmm. Dr. Garg?
Yeah, I think the book, as you rightly pointed out, we were very fortunate to have the book as uh, a special book for our cine, and Dr. Bonnie Kaplan was very kind to author some of ones, and we have shared these with our speakers. So I think the book is a phenomenal addition to integrative thinking and integrative care. So, Bonnie, in the book, you talk quite a bit about microbes, and maybe you could share with our listeners a little bit what do you mean by role of microbes and how nutrition and gut plays a role in brain health. I think it's a beautiful piece of work there, and it will be nice to share in some details the role of microbes and health.
So I think what you're doing is merging two topics there, and I'm just going to split them apart a little bit for a moment, Arun. The main focus of the book is on micronutrients, but we certainly talk about the role of micronutrients in providing healthy microbes in our gut. So let's talk about micronutrients first. It's the only bit of jargon that I really need to explain to people, and that's the difference between macronutrients and micronutrients. You see, we have governments putting out dietary guidelines all the time, and those dietary guidelines mostly are focused on proteins, carbs, and fats. And they often don't even distinguish a lot between the good fats and the not so, pro-inflammatory fats. But what we don't really know is what a brain, anybody's brain, needs in the way of the micronutrients, which are the minerals and vitamins. We know that all of them are needed every minute of every day, but there's no way for anybody to test their own brain to find out how much they need of any individual micronutrient, vitamin or mineral, which is a big handicap, not having that metric, right? And so all that we can do as ordinary human beings is really try to consume a diet that gives us all the micronutrients. And there are about 30 of them, 15 vitamins roughly and 15 minerals, in addition to the good essential fatty acids, the omega-3s, which are anti-inflammatory. And if we eat a whole foods kind of diet, which everybody is saying we should be doing because of heart disease and diabetes and everything, we're just drawing attention to the brain. Mm-hmm. But if we do that, we simultaneously ingest thousands of phytonutrients, many of which we don't have names for, we don't know what they do yet, but Mother Nature has packaged them in our crops with those micronutrients for a reason. I mean, we must need them. We know some of them are very good for us. So that's what we need to pay attention to. So maybe I'll pause there because the book does not go into great depth about the human microbiome, mm-hmm. which is where those microbes are. But maybe I'll just add one sentence if I may, and that is, people hear terms like prebiotics and probiotics and they don't know what they mean. Mm-hmm. And people ask me, should I be taking a probiotic? But if you are feeding your gut whole foods, real foods, instead of the ultra-processed stuff, then you are in fact ensuring the health of the healthy gut bugs. That sounds redundant, but we know there are a lot of organisms in our gut which are very helpful to us, and they need those whole foods. And so they will dominate them. They will help ensure that we don't have an imbalance of the microbes in our guts. Mm-hmm. Are you still there?
Absolutely, yeah, absolutely, yeah.
That's so I think that makes a lot of sense, and I think it just what your book points out is an integrative way, not only the role of supplements, not only the role of micronutrients, but our own lifestyle and our own microbes. So I think that's really a key point. In your book, you also talk about stress and supplements. So chapter 7, there was improving resilience to trauma and stress with supplements. So obviously, micronutrients have a major role here, and how brain responds to it and understanding. So maybe we could cover a little
Absolutely.
bit.
We would like to learn more about it, but it's time for a break. Let's go for a break. We'll be shortly back. And as Dr. Garg has mentioned about supplements, we would like to know about that. But along with that, also, what is happening to our nutrition now? When you talked about ultra processed foods, how are they damaging or how are they not helping us? We'll talk about that also. So, after this short break, Dr. Bonnie and Dr. Garg, we'll be shortly back.
ਹਰ ਰੰਗ ਹੈ ਸਾਡੇ ਕੋ, ਹਰ ਮਾਡਲ, ਹਰ ਇੱਕ ਦੀ ਆਪਣੀ ਵੱਖਰੀ ਪਹਿਚਾਣ। ਅਸੀਂ ਇੱਕ ਪਰਿਵਾਰ ਹਾਂ, ਸਾਡਾ ਕਰਮ ਹੈ ਅੱਗੇ ਵਧਾਉਣਾ, ਸਫ਼ਰ ਨੂੰ ਸੌਖਾ ਬਣਾਉਣਾ। ਬਸੰਤ ਮੋਟਰਸ, ਤੁਹਾਡੇ ਨਾਲ, ਤੁਹਾਡੇ ਕਰਕੇ।
है जुल्म ढाने का अंदाज भी कितना हंसी, हमारी जान पर बनाई है जब जब उसने अंगड़ाई ली। कभी खामोश रहते हैं, कभी शोर होता है। मोहब्बत में शरारत का मजा कुछ और होता है। दिल को जज्बात का तोहफा, खामोशियों को बात का तोहफा, खूबसूरती में जड़ी नजाकत अदाओं की चांद से मुखड़े को चांद सा तोहफा।
भारत ज्वेलर्स, सच्चे प्यार की चमक जैसा। पायल बिजनेस सेंटर सरी।
ਕੀ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਸਰੀ, ਡੈਲਟਾ, ਰਿਚਮੰਡ, ਐਬਸਫੋਰਡ ਜਾਂ ਵੈਂਕੂਵਰ ਵਿੱਚ ਨਵਾਂ ਘਰ ਬਣਾਉਣ ਬਾਰੇ ਸੋਚ ਰਹੇ ਹੋ ਜਾਂ ਫਿਰ ਪੁਰਾਣੇ ਘਰ ਨੂੰ ਰੈਨੋਵੇਟ ਕਰਨਾ ਚਾਹੁੰਦੇ ਹੋ? ਤੁਹਾਨੂੰ ਲੋੜ ਹੈ ਇੱਕ ਤਜਰਬੇਕਾਰ ਬਿਲਡਰ, ਇੱਕ ਕ੍ਰੀਏਟਿਵ ਇੰਟੀਰੀਅਰ ਡਿਜ਼ਾਈਨਰ ਦੀ, ਜੋ ਤੁਹਾਨੂੰ ਸਹੀ ਤਰ੍ਹਾਂ ਗਾਈਡ ਕਰ ਸਕਣ ਤੇ ਤੁਹਾਡੇ ਸੁਪਨੇ ਦੇ ਘਰ ਨੂੰ ਉਸਾਰ ਸਕਣ। ਅੱਜ ਹੀ ਕਾਲ ਕਰੋ ਹਰਪ੍ਰੀਤ ਜਾਂ ਸੰਦੀਪ 6048259295 ਉੱਤੇ।
Once again, welcome back to the program. Our special guests today are Dr. Bonnie Kaplan and Dr. Arun Garg is my co-host, and we are talking about a very important issue, which is brain health. How to improve our brain health, because Dr. Bonnie has written a book, The Better Brain, which is available easily, and I would highly recommend it that we all should read it. And I also had the opportunity to go through the book and learned a lot as to what we are consuming and how it is not helping us. So let's get back to our both guests and continue with that discussion. So Dr. Bonnie, what Dr. Garg asked and what I added on about the ultra processed foods that you mentioned, how are these things impacting us?
Yeah, this is the most disturbing thing that I've learned in the last couple years, is that our society is voluntarily eliminating more than 50% of the micronutrients that they could be consuming if they ate real food. In other words, to put it a different way, the latest data, I'm going to cite the US data, but it's very comparable in Canada and very comparable in the UK. And from the US, because it's very recent, they showed that 2/3 of the caloric intake of our children under the age of 19, 2/3 is from ultra-processed packaged chemicals, what some people call ultra-processed food. I don't like to call it ultra-processed food, just to make a point that it isn't food. I mean, food is what we consume to make our cells grow and develop and function. And there is nothing in most of those packages which is helping any cellular activity. And yet 2/3 of what is going into our children's mouths right now, every day, is from that ultra-processed, industrialized chemical package. Adults don't have much to be proud of. For them, the latest data show 57% is from the ultra-processed chemical stuff. So clearly, the food companies have managed to completely pollute and we have let them pollute the stuff that we are consuming. So what does that mean? If you're cutting out more than half of the micronutrients, for example, that your brain needs, and more than half of the essential fatty acids it needs for our cell walls, you're going to impact brain function. And we have very good data that the symptoms that will emerge are depression, anxiety, attention deficit disorder. There's very good data from longitudinal prospective studies. We go over all of this in our book. I mean, basically, eating that way is a risk factor and predicts who will develop a mental illness. So if the public knew that, I think we would change the way we eat. So that's one thing to know about the ultra-processed stuff. Now, there is also emerging data to suggest that the chemicals that are in that ultra-processed stuff are, in fact, also very pro-inflammatory and very harmful for our guts and for our brains. So the message is clear. We really need to go back to eating real food, which often is a traditional diet that some of us had as children from different cultures. I mean, it's very sad to see people come from different cultures into North America and stop eating the healthy food that they were brought up on. But it happens, you know?
Right. So, Dr. Garg,
Yeah.
what Dr. Bonnie has mentioned, could you please elaborate when it comes to the South Asian culture and what we are finding out in our communities also? Could you please elaborate on that? And then I'll come back to Dr. Bonnie with the question you asked her about supplements and micronutrients.
Yeah, no, I think, this is, Bonnie, as you know, this is of great interest to us, both Harpreet and myself. We dedicate very big portion of our sessions on eating and food and nutrition, and in a practical way, how one could have better eat. So first thing is, in my opinion, South Asian diet, which is our heritage, is a very healthy diet. I think
Okay.
what has become wrong with it is how we prepare. So the lifestyle around it is really the bigger problem than the food itself. We want to stay with the South Asian diet. It's one of the healthiest diet. You don't need to change because behavior change is kind of very difficult. But maybe what we could share with our listeners is what's in your book about why not to eat. And that's one part of our diet which has become very difficult and very problematic, and that is added sugar or sugar. And you talk about
Mm.
in your diet a spoonful of sugar, and you describe the amount of sugar. And I would say, Harpreetji, in our diet, one thing if we remember is added sugar,
Yeah.
especially the sugar which we have got used to, which is a very recent phenomenon. It's only in last 50 years with
Right.
industrialization, with availability of refined sugar, and sugar is a great addiction, and we get addicted to it. It has come about. And I think by awareness, I'm very pleased with our efforts and what we are doing. The awareness is getting there. So, Bonnie, if you could just share a little bit in detail what you have in your book about sugar and a spoonful of sugar and what it can do and what we should not be doing.
Yeah. Yeah. Sugar addiction is a huge problem. And I don't use the term addiction lightly, but people who try to go off of sugar too abruptly do suffer withdrawal symptoms and often can't get off of it. I mean, it seems very addictive from what I have seen. But if you want to read how this has happened, and you're right that it's a window of about 50 years, Michael Moss has a couple of books out. One is called Hooked, another is called Fat, Sugar, Salt, or maybe it's Sugar, Fat, Salt. I might have them in the wrong order. The point is, one of the things that he shows is how the people who manufacture processed food, so-called food products, basically about 30 years ago, I think, began just almost, you could picture them walking through a grocery store, going aisle by aisle and asking, well, can we add sugar to this? Can we add sugar to that? I remember when I became aware of sugar in meat. I mean, you might, I think you probably are vegetarians, but as you know, the way our society was brought up 50 to 100 years ago, you would never have sweeteners on meat or dipping sauces with sugar because meat was a savory and it wasn't a dessert. But now if you buy anything like a frozen hamburger, it has sugar in it. So there's a long story as to how that happened that we probably don't have time to go into here. In your South Asian diet, which I agree with you is fundamentally very, very healthy, there is no sugar added to the vegetables or rice or things like that, right? But there is a heavy emphasis on desserts. Is that right?
yeah.
Is that where the sugar is ingested? Yeah. Yes.
Yeah,
We all
beside
laugh about desserts.
Absolutely.
beside dessert, have recipes and we have pictures of jalebis, rasgullas, and gulab jamuns, which I think just nothing but
Jalebis.
syrup.
Right.
But I think a key message is really sugar, which we drink in our beverages, and like tea and coffee and Coca-Cola and soft drinks. And I think that is one of the biggest culprit. And if there is no other
Oh, yeah.
message as far as food goes in terms of South Asian diet, that is the prime message we want to bring.
Very true. And
I
actually, none of the
appreciate.
communities are bereft now of sugar, and every culture has a different way of celebrating it. And you'll be surprised to know that in Surrey, which is the hub of the South Asian community, there's a street where there are more than 90 sweet shops, stretching from about 12 blocks or 20 blocks, I would say. So it's not the other way around. While we are consuming very good food, but the other time, because of the desserts and other things, and of course fast food is picking up amongst the youngsters, and everybody in this fast lifestyle is forgetting the basics of cooking at home. And when we go out and eat food, definitely we know what is added into it. Again, it's a time for a break. We'll go for a short break, and in the last segment, we'd like to learn more, Dr. Bonnie, from you about what Dr. Garg had asked about the use of supplements. Why is it necessary now that for a better brain, we ought to supplement our diet with some things, the basic essentials, the fatty acids, what you talked about, or the micronutrients, and how to get good supplements, how to know that what we are consuming is not synthetic and it might have a detrimental effect on our body and the brain. So we'll talk all about this after this short break.
ਘਰ ਇੱਕ ਐਸੀ ਥਾਂ ਹੁੰਦੀ ਹੈ ਜਿੱਥੇ ਹਰ ਕੋਈ ਆਪਣੀ ਨਿੱਜੀ ਜ਼ਿੰਦਗੀ ਦੇ ਸੁਨਹਿਰੀ ਪਲ ਯਾਦ ਰੱਖਦਾ ਹੈ। ਉਹ ਜਗ੍ਹਾ ਜਿੱਥੇ ਉਹ ਰਹਿੰਦਾ ਹੈ ਤੇ ਪਿਆਰ ਭਰਿਆ ਜੀਵਨ ਬਤੀਤ ਕਰਦਾ ਹੈ। ਇਹ ਗੱਲਾਂ ਤਾਂ ਹੀ ਪੂਰੀਆਂ ਹੁੰਦੀਆਂ ਨੇ ਜਦ ਕਿਸੇ ਜਗ੍ਹਾ ਨੂੰ ਸਜੇ ਹੋਏ ਘਰ 'ਚ ਬਦਲਿਆ ਜਾਵੇ। ਨਵੇਂ ਘਰਾਂ ਨੂੰ ਫਰੇਮਿੰਗ ਤੋਂ ਲੈ ਕੇ ਫਿਨਿਸ਼ਿੰਗ ਤੱਕ, ਡ੍ਰੇਪਰੀ, ਪੇਂਟਿੰਗਸ ਤੋਂ ਲੈ ਕੇ ਡੈਕੋਰੇਸ਼ਨ ਅਸੈਸਰੀਜ਼ ਤੱਕ, ਤੁਸੀਂ SK ਹੋਮ ਡਿਜ਼ਾਈਨਸ ਦੀਆਂ ਪ੍ਰੋਫੈਸ਼ਨਲ ਸਰਵਿਸਿਜ਼ ਲੈ ਕੇ ਆਪਣੇ ਸੁਪਨਿਆਂ ਦੇ ਘਰ ਨੂੰ ਹਕੀਕਤ 'ਚ ਬਦਲ ਸਕਦੇ ਹੋ। ਕੰਟੈਕਟ ਕਰੋ ਸੰਦੀਪ ਕੌਰ 6048259295।
ਜੇ ਕਿਸੇ ਬਿਜ਼ਨਸਮੈਨ ਨੂੰ ਕੋਈ ਪਿਆਰ ਕਰਦਾ ਹੈ ਤਾਂ ਕੀ ਵਜ੍ਹਾ ਹੋ ਸਕਦੀ ਹੈ? ਸੁਖੀ ਬਾਟ ਮੋਟਰਸ ਦੇ ਓਨਰ ਸੁਖੀ ਬਾਟ ਨੂੰ ਵੇਖ ਕੇ ਇਹ ਗੱਲ ਸਮਝ ਆ ਜਾਂਦੀ ਹੈ। ਇੰਟੈਲੀਜੈਂਸ ਦਾ ਉਦਾਹਰਨ ਇਹ ਹੈ ਕਿ ਕਾਰ ਸੈਗਮੈਂਟ ਤੋਂ ਵੱਖ ਸੁਖੀ ਬਾਟ ਮੋਟਰਸ ਲੈ ਕੇ ਆਏ ਨੇ ਸਰੀ ਦਾ ਪਹਿਲਾ ਟਰੱਕ ਸੈਂਟਰ, ਜਿੱਥੇ ਤੁਹਾਡੇ ਲੋੜ ਦੇ ਹਿਸਾਬ ਨਾਲ ਤੁਹਾਨੂੰ ਲੋੜੀਂਦੇ ਟਰੱਕਸ ਬਾਰੇ ਗਾਈਡੈਂਸ ਦਿੱਤੀ ਜਾਂਦੀ ਹੈ। ਸਪੇਸ, ਮੋਡੀਫਿਕੇਸ਼ਨ ਤੇ ਫਿਊਲ ਐਫੀਸ਼ੀਐਂਸੀ ਸਭ ਨੂੰ ਧਿਆਨ ਵਿੱਚ ਰੱਖਿਆ ਜਾਂਦਾ ਹੈ। ਸੁਖੀ ਬਾਟ ਟਰੱਕ ਸੈਂਟਰ ਇਹਨਾਂ ਟਰੱਕਾਂ ਨਾਲ ਹੀ ਹੈ ਟੌਰ।
ਵੈਨਕਾਸਾ ਟਾਈਲ ਅਤੇ ਸਟੋਨ ਸ਼ੋਰੂਮ ਇੱਕ ਐਸੀ ਥਾਂ ਹੈ ਜਿੱਥੇ ਤੁਹਾਨੂੰ ਹੋਲਸੇਲ ਕੀਮਤਾਂ ਤੇ ਹਰ ਕਿਸਮ ਦੀਆਂ ਟਾਈਲਸ, ਸਟੋਨ, ਮਾਰਬਲ, ਬੈਕਸਪਲੈਸ਼, ਮੋਜ਼ੇਕ ਆਦਿ ਵਾਜਬ ਕੀਮਤਾਂ ਤੇ ਮਿਲ ਸਕਦਾ ਹੈ। ਇਟਾਲੀਅਨ, ਸਪੈਨਿਸ਼, ਚਾਈਨੀਜ਼ ਪੋਰਸਲਨ ਜਾਂ ਸਿਰੈਮਿਕ ਟਾਈਲਸ ਜਾਂ ਮਾਰਬਲ ਸਪੈਸ਼ਲ ਆਰਡਰ ਤੇ ਜਾਂ ਕਲੀਅਰੈਂਸ ਤੇ ਲੈ ਸਕਦੇ ਹੋ। ਮਾਲਕ ਡਾਇਰੈਕਟ ਟਾਈਲਸ ਇੰਪੋਰਟ ਕਰਦੇ ਹਨ, ਜਿਸ ਕਰਕੇ ਵਧੀਆ ਕੁਆਲਿਟੀ ਦਾ ਸਮਾਨ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਆਪਣੇ ਘਰ ਦਾ ਸ਼ਿੰਗਾਰ ਬਣਾ ਸਕਦੇ ਹੋ। ਅੱਜ ਹੀ ਵਿਜ਼ਿਟ ਕਰੋ 13042884 ਐਵਨਿਊ ਸਰੀ। ਪੰਜਾਬੀ ਹਿੰਦੀ ਵਿੱਚ ਗੱਲ ਕਰਨ ਲਈ ਕਾਲ ਕਰੋ 604 330 7363 604 330 7363। Once again, welcome back to the program. ਅੱਜ ਦਾ ਇਹ ਪ੍ਰੋਗਰਾਮ ਤੁਹਾਡੇ ਤੱਕ ਪਹੁੰਚਾਇਆ ਜਾ ਰਿਹਾ ਹੈ AMC ਇੰਸ਼ੋਰੈਂਸ ਦੇ ਸਹਿਯੋਗ ਨਾਲ। ਹੋਮ, ਆਟੋ, ਟਰੈਵਲ, ਬਿਜ਼ਨਸ, ਲਾਈਫ ਜਾਂ ਰਿਕ੍ਰੀਏਸ਼ਨਲ ਇੰਸ਼ੋਰੈਂਸ ਲੈਣੀ ਹੈ ਤਾਂ ਇਹਨਾਂ ਦੀਆਂ 9 ਬ੍ਰਾਂਚਸ ਨੇ ਲੋਅਰ ਮੇਨਲੈਂਡ ਵਿੱਚ, ਜੋ ਹਫਤੇ ਦੇ 7 ਦਿਨ ਖੁੱਲ੍ਹੀਆਂ ਰਹਿੰਦੀਆਂ ਨੇ ਤੇ ਤੁਹਾਨੂੰ ਸਰਵ ਕਰਦੀਆਂ ਨੇ। 6045076666 ਤੇ ਫੋਨ ਕਰਕੇ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਹੋਰ ਜਾਣਕਾਰੀ ਲੈ ਸਕਦੇ ਹੋ। ਸਾਡੇ ਅਗਲੇ ਸਹਿਯੋਗੀ ਹਨ ਅਗਨੀਹੋਤਰੀ ਇਮੀਗ੍ਰੇਸ਼ਨ ਲਿਮਿਟਡ। ਟੈਂਪਰੇਰੀ ਸਟੇਟਸ, PR ਹੋ, ਨਵੇਂ ਹੋ ਕੈਨੇਡਾ ਵਿੱਚ, ਅੰਤਰਰਾਸ਼ਟਰੀ ਵਿਦਿਆਰਥੀ ਹੋ, ਸਪਾਂਸਰ ਕਰਨ ਨੇ ਪੇਰੈਂਟਸ ਜਾਂ ਗ੍ਰੈਂਡ ਪੇਰੈਂਟਸ, ਤਾਂ ਤੁਹਾਡੀ ਮਦਦ ਕਰ ਸਕਦੇ ਨੇ ਅਗਨੀਹੋਤਰੀ ਇਮੀਗ੍ਰੇਸ਼ਨ ਕੰਸਲਟਿੰਗ। 2006 ਤੋਂ ਨੀਰਾ ਅਗਨੀਹੋਤਰੀ ਐਜ਼ ਸਰਟੀਫਾਈਡ ਇਮੀਗ੍ਰੇਸ਼ਨ ਕੰਸਲਟੈਂਟ ਕੰਮ ਕਰ ਰਹੇ ਨੇ। ਤੁਹਾਨੂੰ ਸਹੀ ਸਲਾਹ ਦੇਣ ਦਾ ਵਾਅਦਾ ਕਰਦੇ ਨੇ। ਹੋਰ ਜਾਣਕਾਰੀ ਲਈ ਕਾਲ ਕਰੋ 604 597 2284 604 597 2284। So today we are having a very important discussion as to how to have better brain health, and we are very pleased to have Dr. Bonnie Kaplan, who is an expert in this particular field, and she's talking about the book. Apart from that, what all is required and what we need to leave so that we can have better brain health. And of course, I am being joined by Dr. Arun Garg, my co-host. So let's get back to our guests and continue with the discussion in the last segment. So, Dr. Bonnie, could you add on why is there a need now being felt that we ought to have supplementation along with what we are consuming? Why is it that the food, what we are eating, even of course the ultra processed foods you have talked about, but even the other food that we are consuming, because of the pesticides and insecticides and whatnot, it is not having that kind of nutrition that is required for a good brain health?
Yes, it's not a black and white issue. There's shades of gray in between, but we certainly are very concerned about the fact that some of the pesticides and herbicides chelate and change the mineral and vitamin availability for us humans who come along and need to consume those micronutrients. There is a branch of agriculture called Regenerative Agriculture, which is working on this very hard, but they are still very much the minority in North America. You hear quotes that over 90% of the arable land in North America is saturated by glyphosate, which is one of the most worrisome and ubiquitous herbicides. So we have a long way to go there, but I am a food first person, and I know that there are some people who probably have inherited a need for more micronutrients than they can get even in a very healthy diet. But when I see that we are voluntarily eliminating any possibility of getting nutrients for our brain 2/3 of the time, or at least 50% of the time, by eating the ultra processed industrialized product, I think that's the most important thing I want your audience to take away. If you can double your nutrient intake by eating real food instead of all of that other stuff in packages, then you've taken a giant step forward. And I'm not saying you should never have jalebi or gulab jamun. I mean, these are, we should all be able to have a treat. I say, life is not worth living without an occasional chocolate chip cookie. So
Right.
we all need to have an occasional treat, but it should be occasional. And food is not a treat. Food is what we ingest to build and maintain ourselves. Now, having said that, I know you want to know about specific micronutrient supplements. So I can say a few words about that if you'd like.
Sure.
Okay, so I'm a bit of an academic snob. I'm most interested in the things that have been studied, and they fall into two areas. One area is simply resilience in the face of stress. Maybe you have someone who is not battling a mental health disorder, but is just under a lot of stress because of exam time or a change in their lives or widowhood or something. There is a very solid scientific literature showing that if they take a B complex once a day after breakfast, because you always want it on a full stomach, it will improve their mental health resilience. It doesn't remove the stressor, but it enables them to cope better. Think of it that way. It's an empowering ability to be able to cope better with the problems that they're faced with. Now, that's in the general population, and it's very important, and I don't know why we can't get the media to cover information about that. For people who actually have a genuine disorder, depression, bipolar disorder, ADHD, etc., taking just B complex is not enough. At least there's no research to suggest that it has any impact, any clinical benefit. However, there are broad spectrum products which have all the vitamins and minerals that we should be getting every day, and people who supplement with those broad spectrum products will generally have some improvement in their health. Not all the time, because there's no magic out there. There's no one thing that's going to help everybody. But the reality is that all the clinical trials show that the broad spectrum formulas are very beneficial. They are not available in your stores, but they are available online. There are two companies, and I can give you their names, but I want your audience to know that none of the people who've been studying these products, including me, are financially affiliated with the companies. So I don't like to be seen as promoting their products, but those are the websites to look at. Shall I give them to you later or mention them now?
No, you can talk around. Tell us, yeah.
So originally the first company is called True Hope. So it's www.truehope, one word, DRUEHOPE.com. And then the two families that formed True Hope kind of split up, as businesses do. The business partners split up. And the second company was formed by the Hardy family. And so it is www.hardynutritionals.com. Hardy is HARDY, nutritionals with an S.com. Those are the two companies that have really focused on producing and supporting research without money, because we don't want that corruption, but fostering research on mental disorders.
That's wonderful. You know, Harpreet, as we talk more and more, there are beginning to be awareness. So I was also approached by a recent company which is doing exactly that, trying to bring biochemical basis of supplements and what's additive and what food is, and make it into a South Asian awareness. So I think hopefully it's very good that future will bring some of this knowledge, especially, you know, what makes a difference is at the real site. And I think the food availability, which is easily available, which is easily can be obtained, is what we need. You know, one of the reason industrial food has become so popular is because it became so easily available.
Right.
And I think we need to now make sure that with this awareness, people are also have access to the good food, because we're not going to we're not going to turn the clock back where people just go start right from scratch every time they make meal. It just industrial society won't allow. But I think that this is very good that more and more people are getting into this. So Bonnie, in your book, you also have some recipes. I was really very pleased to see that you have some very good recipes. Maybe in next edition, we could have one or two good Indian recipes there.
Yes.
You know, especially lentil soup will be very good. You know, it's very nutritious and use of spices.
Lentils are in there. Our lentil recipe is in there. Lentil stew.
It is, yes.
But
what he's pointing out is specifically for the South Asian community also. And then, of course, Dr. Garg can help you out in that. And we can recommend you a lot of things which can be added on, which are very healthy for our brain also.
Absolutely.
Okay, Dr. Bonnie.
May I pick up a loose end?
Please, carry on.
Is it possible to pick up?
Yes.
So, two loose ends. First of all, I just want you to know that I wanted that chapter to be all vegetarian, but I was outvoted. So I just want you to know that. But no, it's a loose end that right before that last commercial break about soft drinks. The best way to become, I think, obese and diabetic is to drink your sugar. Maybe that's a little flippant, but it really is just a terrible pathway to go down. And people who are addicted to sugar find it really hard to get off of those soft drinks. And so one of the things that I've recommended, I'll just leave you with one little concrete tip that maybe your audience can try, is that we now have in Canada carbonated water that has just a drop of a fruit flavor in it. And getting people off of the really terrible sugar drinks onto just water and tea, which is what we should all be drinking, right? Is sometimes you need a transition. And so some of these things like, I don't know if I should mention brand names, but Bubbly and, I just blocked on another name that I see, but you know what I mean by the carbonated water with a little bit of flavor in it, no sugar, no artificial sugar. It is a stepping stone for a lot of people. I think they get used to the carbonation in addition to the sugar, and that's why.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Very true. And Dr. Bonnie, also, if you could talk about a little bit about, like we are talking about supplements, but along with that, dry fruits, especially walnuts, almonds, all these things. How are these beneficial for our brain?
Very much so. Walnuts are a great source of omega-3s if you have enough vitamins and minerals simultaneously to for the metabolic pathways that turn the precursors into EPA and DHA. They all go together. But let me take a step back and answer the broader question, if I may, Harpreet, which is the broader question is what is in a really healthy whole foods diet, okay? Yeah. And so, of course, it's fruits and vegetables, no matter if you're a carnivore or vegetarian. Of course, it's olive oils for your fats whenever possible. Walnuts and other kinds of nuts and seeds are your go-to snack. And for your main course, all of the beans, lentils, all the legumes, all of those, and they are so inexpensive. This is why a whole foods diet will save most people money. One study showed that people saved 20% when they stopped eating the packaged stuff and began preparing food with beans and legumes. Mm-hmm. So, and lentils are, of course, the fastest for people who don't have a lot of time. Mm-hmm. And then, of course, if there's dairy, if you're going to eat grains, eat whole grains. If you're going to eat meat, lean meat, chicken, etc. Mm-hmm.
Very true.
So I hope that gives you the broader
Oh,
picture.
yes, absolutely. Wonderful. So that's really interesting that we should know, and the statistics that you're pointing out are really alarming. And the way, if we keep on following this trend, we are finding that in future it's going to be more troublesome for the common persons, and these mental illnesses will be on the rise. So very rightly, as you have said, we need to focus on our lifestyle, on our eating habits, and that's what Canada-India Network Society through its various programs has been emphasizing. And we have been reaching out to the public, not only through this program, but other way also, that we need to understand what we are consuming, because it's not just the brain health, but otherwise also physical ailments are on the rise. And just because if we control our nutrition, a lot of things can be handled. Dr. Garg, in conclusion, if you would like to ask or add anything.
No, I think the main message is full healthy food and added sugar. And I think, as Bonnie pointed out, the carbonated water. What I've found a very good example is just warm water. If you get into the habit of starting to drink warm water, it goes long ways in overcoming this addiction of sugar. If you're going to have tea, have it without sugar, and coffee without sugar. I think that goes long ways. So I would say that's a simple advice. The book itself goes into some details, and I think if anybody was interested, they could get a copy of the book and learn more about the recipes as well as the biochemistry of the food. So thank you again.
Absolutely, and the recipes are really great, very easy to make, and delicious also. That's another thing. Dr. Bonnie, in conclusion, what would you like to say?
Well, I guess I'd just like to leave you with my website, if I may, because
Absolutely.
First of all, you can access the book through there, but also there are a lot of recorded videos on there that people find useful, including a 5-minute video that explains what nutrients do in your brain cells. And also, if you want to contact me, there's a contact tab. So it's my name, except you have to have my middle initial, which is J. So it's BonnieJKaplan.com.
Excellent. It was a pleasure talking to you. Thank you very much for this insightful information, and we hope our viewers all over the world will benefit from this and go through your book and learn more about how we can have better brain health. Thank you, Dr. Garg, and thank you, Dr. Kaplan. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
ਸੋ ਇਹ ਸਨ ਸਾਡੇ ਅੱਜ ਦੇ ਮਹਿਮਾਨ ਡਾਕਟਰ ਅਰੁਣ ਗਰਗ ਅਤੇ ਡਾਕਟਰ ਬੋਨੀ ਕੈਪਲਨ। ਤੇ ਜਿਸ ਤਰ੍ਹਾਂ ਡਾਕਟਰ ਬੋਨੀ ਕੈਪਲਨ ਨੇ ਗੱਲ ਕਹੀ ਹੈ, ਇਹਨਾਂ ਦੀ ਵੈਬਸਾਈਟ ਹੈ bonnie.kaplan.com। ਸੋ ਇਸ ਵੈਬਸਾਈਟ ਤੇ ਜਾ ਕੇ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਸਾਰੀ ਇਨਫੋਰਮੇਸ਼ਨ ਲੈ ਸਕਦੇ ਹੈਗੇ ਹੋ। ਅਸੀਂ ਕੰਟਰੋਲ ਕਰੀਏ ਆਪਣੀ ਸਿਹਤ ਦੇ ਉੱਤੇ, ਆਪ ਅਸੀਂ ਕਾਬਜ਼ ਹੋਈਏ, ਕਿਉਂਕਿ ਅੱਜ ਸਮੱਸਿਆਵਾਂ ਵਧ ਰਹੀਆਂ ਨੇ। ਮੈਂਟਲ ਹੈਲਥ, ਫਿਜ਼ੀਕਲ ਹੈਲਥ ਡਿਕਲਾਈਨ ਵਾਲੇ ਪਾਸੇ ਜਾ ਰਹੀ ਹੈ। ਬਟ ਵੀ ਟੇਕ ਕੰਟਰੋਲ ਆਫ ਆਵਰ ਹੈਲਥ ਬਾਈ ਗੁੱਡ ਨਿਊਟ੍ਰੀਸ਼ਨ ਐਂਡ ਗੁੱਡ ਸਪਲੀਮੈਂਟਸ, definitely we will be living a good life। ਸਮਾਂ ਕੱਢ ਕੇ ਪ੍ਰੋਗਰਾਮ ਵਿੱਚ ਸ਼ਾਮਲ ਹੋਣ ਲਈ ਬਹੁਤ ਬਹੁਤ ਧੰਨਵਾਦ। ਤੁਹਾਡਾ ਮੇਰਾ ਸਾਥ ਹੋਇਆ ਕਰਦਾ ਹੈ ਮੰਡੇ ਟੂ ਫਰਾਈਡੇ ਸ਼ਾਮ ਦੇ 6 ਵਜੇ ਪੈਸੀਫਿਕ ਸਟੈਂਡਰਡ ਟਾਈਮ ਦੇ ਮੁਤਾਬਿਕ। ਸੋ ਇਫ ਯੂ ਆਲਸੋ ਵਾਂਟ ਟੂ ਬੀ ਅ ਪਾਰਟ ਆਫ ਦਿਸ ਪ੍ਰੋਗਰਾਮ, or you know someone who can add on to something, some knowledge, some wisdom to this program, please do contact me at 604-603-7555, or you can email me at harpreetsinghshow@gmail.com। ਇੱਥੇ ਹੀ ਕਰਦਾ ਪ੍ਰੋਗਰਾਮ ਦੀ ਸਮਾਪਤੀ। ਫਿਰ ਮੁਲਾਕਾਤ ਕਰਾਂਗੇ। ਹੈਵ ਅ ਸੇਫ ਈਵਨਿੰਗ, ਸਟੇ ਹੈਲਦੀ ਐਂਡ ਇੰਜੋਏ ਯੋਰਸੈਲਫ।